we'll just do a quick recap of 5 minutes. So we are on track. So last week we started with this RAML, and before these two sessions, we had completed the introduction and how API works, everything in detail we have completed. And last week we started with just the RAML part, like how we have to design the API spec. So I'll just reiterate the slides that RAML is a structured way to just define your API spec, and it's an open source, and you can use other open source like Swagger and everything to create your API spec. Also, we can use programming language to create, but it's like very big, it becomes complicated to use programming. So that's why we use RAML. So this was the development cycle, which where we design and simulate feedback and then validate. So this is what we are going to do today. We will design a RAML, then we'll simulate it in our mocking services, and then we'll check that if we need any feedback from the business. So in our case, we'll not be having any feedback. So, but in normal cases, this goes on for a week or something, that we have to do changes in our feedback because multiple systems are involved, right? So if we are giving a output and we have to share that output to Salesforce, and Salesforce team will say that, hey, this column needs to be changed. This column needs to be a different, then only we'll accept the values. So things like that will keep on coming, and then we have to just do changes at our side and then validate. So we discuss about this also, that this is a resource, flight resource, which always starts with a slash, and under that we have different methods we can use: get method, post method. And if you are using a nested method, because flights and ID is a nested method of flight, so it should be indented under the flight resource, and then again we can use different resource under it. So this was completed.
So quick question, we saw that 4 stages, right? Design up to the validate. These are all happening within the studio, right? Or at the we saw some web page, right, where we defined.
Yes, this is happening in the web page API endpoint platform. So till now we haven't used Studio anywhere. Okay, so I had just given one example that how easy it is to create with Studio, but till now in any of our session we haven't used anything for Studio.
Okay, so these are all happening in the endpoint.
Right. So this is happening in the web page because if it is happening in the web page, so it will be easier for people to share and collaborate with teams. If you do it in your local, that is the Studio. So again, you have to use different tools to collaborate with your teams like GitHub and all things. So to avoid this, that is why we use this web page, because it has options to share these specs with your team and get the feedback and everything. That is why.
So the web page is running on the cloud system, right?
Yes. So that is taken care by MuleSoft. You don't have to do any maintenance or anything on that web page. It's totally controlled by MuleSoft. Okay. So this is flight resource we talked about, and again, this is the ID resource. So this is an important thing to note, that anything with the URI parameter will have this curly braces. URI parameters are enclosed in curly braces. And we are passing the ID value, the flight ID value of 1, 2, or any flight ID. That is why we are just keeping it in enclosed brackets.
So the resources we specify, like flights ID, does it have any naming convention, or the wording should be in cap or all lowercase or all uppercase? Is there any restriction, or it's all like the way we want, right?
I'll show you. So anything, if you open, this is what we're talking about resources, right? Like just a side example again. So anything like hotels, you see, this is one resource, right?
Yeah.
This is a domain name and this is the hotel's resource. So it can be anything. It depends on you. It's completely your choice.
Okay.
No small and capital thing. It totally depends on you.
Okay. Some softwares, they may have some standard, right? So this is how we should use.
Correct. So, but the resource is user defined. Like you can keep anything you want. Just have to not use the basic keywords like get and post in here, right?
Okay.
That's it. Otherwise, yeah, RAML is a case sensitive and very indented specific language to write, but you have a free hand on the resource at least. Like you can define anything on your resource, the name of the resource. Okay. So as you're mentioning that where it is residing, so this is the design center, any point platform. So this is not the ID, this is the web page. So we have the central position where is the editor, where we will be writing all the code, our specification that how it should behave. So basically we are just instructing it in a language that how it should behave and how it should like if I'm clicking the get method, what it should give. And if I'm posting something, what should it give? In that way, we're just defining the behavior of an API. Okay. And as like MuleSoft implements that you should use more of reusable components. That's why we have a file browser in here. So we can make our uh, spec more reusable for like the future purpose. That's why we have a file browser. We can keep all the files which we require in here. And this is a self which will help us in defining all the keywords and all the response actions, everything. So this will come into handy, like you don't have to write it, you just have to click and get whatever you need. So this is helpful, and this is the API console. So at the same time, this is you can test it. You don't have to go to any REST client to test your API spec. You can directly test it from here. So we discussed these things in the last lecture.
Yeah.
And then we had created one API designer. Yeah, API designer to define an API with RAML. So we'll start it again because I think we may have forgot few things. So it's good to start it again. Okay, so testing API design without code. So I told you like how after doing it, we are just using the get methods and post methods. So this is this API console, what I was talking about, the same thing. Okay,
Oh,
that how we can test it in API console. And also we have mocking service. So we can copy the URL because it will mock our whatever it's there, and then we can use the same URL in our REST client. Okay, so this API console is available here. Like we are designing it in API designer, so it is available here. Also, it is available in API portals in Exchange. Okay, so it's like when you go and download a web like any app from Play Store, so you don't get to use it there, right? You just download it and then in your local phone you will use it. That's how it is happening. But in our API portals, we have that capability that even before downloading and getting it to your local, you can just use the API spec and know what it behaves and how it behaves. So
so
this is an addition.
the exchange is kind of a common platform where it is being used for testing, or
So Exchange is a it's like I always give this example of Play Store. So if someone has already developed an app, say WhatsApp or Facebook, so you don't have to develop it and you can just download it and use it in
yeah.
your phone. So it's just like that.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like MuleSoft has provided many like already REST APIs and many things already. But normally what happens is we use the MuleSoft provided things, but in our project, we will define our code and we will keep it and we will use it for our purpose in the future. So that will be completely private. It will not be shared to the everyone in the exchange. So we can have that capability that we can publish our uh, API specs and we can use for the later purpose without sharing to the outside world.
Oh, okay. But it is also possible to publish to the outside world, right?
Yes,
From the
yes, you get that opportunity when you publish that you want to publish it to your business area, or you want to publish it for everyone. Okay, and this is simulating API again, same things. So now we will start with our implementation of how we can start getting. So we will come to this AnyPoint platform, and then we will come to the design center because we need to design the American Flight API. So we will have go to create new, and again we have different options here that what you want to create a new API spec, new fragment. Fragment is just reusable codes. Suppose if you are going to define a new security schema for your project, which has to be used in all the APIs. So you'll just create a new fragment, which will use your code, and that can be referenced in your APIs, REST APIs. You'll come to know in the next section, like next hour, that why we use this new fragment and how we reuse things which are already present. So for now, we will just create a new API spec. We will give the name as anything, but in our case, we are doing it for American flights. So I'll just give American flights API 2. So it will ask which language you want to use, RAML, OS, and all the things. So previously we used RAML 0.8, but this is the latest offering. I think this rolled out like 1.5 years back or something. So RAML 1.0 we will use. Okay, so create API spec.
Is there any difference between the RAML code and YAML code? Because we had just discussed during the initial stage, but syntax wise or the way, what is the?
It is
So we
based
will
on
be covering the
YAML
YAML,
language.
right?
No, like we don't have anything on YAML. Basically, we just have like few things on YAML, but like giving the properties of the runtime properties and all that. We have that in YAML, but YAML is not necessary to learn for Mule.
Oh, okay.
So RAML is the only thing which you will have to go through in any API which you're designing, but not necessarily YAML.
Oh, okay.
So this is our, as I was saying, this is the canvas, and this is the file, this is the shelf, and here we get everything like documentation. And if you go here, the mocking service will be present. Okay, so we will start with our first resource, which we were thinking to try, and that is flights. Flights HTS, and we just have to give a, see, it's showing error because we haven't given the colon. So colon is important after defining any resource. So for flights, what we need to do is whenever we are clicking the flights method, we have to get all the details of the flight, right? When we do a search, it should give us the flights, like all the different flights. So for that, we have to use the HTTP method, which is the get HTTP method. So we will use the get HTTP method, and also we want to add one flight. Like if we want to change any flight, we will just use the post method also. So initially, I'm just giving these two. So as you can see, this is also working behind the scenes, and it is creating a flight resource, and this and try it. Like you can try this and how it will look. It is simultaneously giving us. So we will just see and try, and as we haven't configured it to anything, it will just give a normal default response, which is 200 and empty braces response. Okay, so we have two endpoints, which is the get and write. Post will also give the same because nothing is configured, so by default 200. But for post, if you remember that we should give a 201 response. So we need to configure everything, like when we are clicking on get, what we should get, and when we are posting a flight, like what is the message we should get, and what is the HTTP code we should get. So we will configure all those things now. And before this, we will also add one more method, which is the ID method, which is a nested resource. So and again, it has get method.
So the nested method should always be given under curly brace.
Yeah, not the nested method. It is a URI parameter. That is why it is coming under the curly braces. Okay. If it was not a like under flights, if you want to go check meals, like what are the meals it's offering, so you should not give a curly brace. You can just write meals like that, and it will work. See, it is working, right? No issues. But as it is a URI parameter, so in that case, we need to provide it in curly braces.
Okay, which means suppose if you are sending any parameter value, query
Yeah.
parameter value,
Yeah.
then you, okay.
Query parameter
Whatever
and
is
URI parameter are like two different things. This is URI parameter. So it said if you see in this domain, like anypoint MuleSoft.com /design center /designer. So design center /design center is a first resource. Okay. And
Yeah.
under that we have designer, because the main page is design center, right? And under that we have come to designer. And then again we have project, and then this is our project which I am working. So this is URI parameters. Whenever we have a slash after the domain name and we are passing a value, it is called URI parameters. And for again, this is a URI parameter. And if you want to see the query parameters, it will start with a question mark. So hotels, hotel listing, check-in. Question mark check-in is equal to this, and city is equal to this. So whenever you see a question mark and then a key, this is your query parameters. That is the difference between a URI parameter and a query parameter.
But in the designer, so do we have to mention both the query parameter and the other one with the same curly braces, or?
Yes, I will show you that how first you got to know, right, how the URI parameter is designed. So this
Okay.
is how the URI parameter is designed. We just have to provide a under the curly braces, and the ID, whatever value you want, you can provide here. So if you go to this documentation once again, and this is the ID and get. Okay. So here, if you try it, so you are seeing that ID is required, value is required, URI parameters. It was not there for flights method. It is only for this /ID method, right? So URI parameters are
You
mandatory.
have mentioned that in curly brace.
Yes, yes, that's right. So any value you can give and then you can send. Okay. So this is the flights method, get, post, and the ID method, which is the URI parameter, and the get. So this is only having ID string required. It is like mandatory field. Without this, it will not work. If you just try to send it, it will not work. It is working, but I think it should not work like here. So yeah, the URL is invalid or something. So if this is complete, now we will come to the query parameters for this one. Okay, so we will provide in get method, we will use the query parameters. So why we are using the query parameters in get is, suppose we have to get all the flights and we want to just filter the flights on basis of destination. Okay, so that is why we are using a query parameters. So whatever we are passing when we are giving an input to a API or a website, so we can do it through two methods. One is the URI parameter and one is the query parameter. These are the two ways to do it. Other ways are you can just send the data in body also. Like if you have a big data, you can send it in the body of the request. So normally these three ways we follow. So you're following it till this point, right?
Yeah.
Or any doubts?
No, I'm okay now.
Okay.
I had a question. I had a doubt that why we specify the ID in the curly brace, right?
Mhm.
So which is basically a URI parameter.
Yeah, yeah.
So that will also have the input, right?
Input, right, right, right.
Uh,
So this will
okay.
have mandatory input. Without this, it will not work.
So you pass the ID as 1 or 2 or some value.
Anything, yeah. It can be like string, or that we can define that it should be string or normal value. It can be anything. So that is the advance of RAML, where we want to just define it that it should be of a string string type, or it can be of maximum 10 digit. So whenever we're defining a phone number, suppose many times what we do is we use a customer here, customer resource, and we want to um, search the customer with the customer ID. Okay. So just to be sure that the users are providing the right customer ID, we restrict the like maximum length and minimum length of customer ID. So they don't give us a wrong input and at the start of the page. So we can do all those things.
In the flights resource,
Mhm.
I can get all the flights,
Yes,
right? Or I
yes,
can get one particular flight
correct,
based
correct.
on submission.
Mhm.
So how we can distinguish that search?
Yes, yes. So that's what I'm going to explain it to you.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a flight resource and this is a get method. Now we will define in get method. Actually, we're defining everything here. Forget about the post and ID now. Okay, just we'll have to concentrate on this get method, that how it will behave and what input it requires, what response it will give, what will be the body, what will be the example response. Everything we will just define now. So just to get the a destination, that it should also give us an opportunity to filter based on the destination. So for that, we are using this query parameters. Once it's built, then you'll have a complete understanding. Okay. So just follow it for now. So there's a query parameters. And as I showed you in this query parameters, whenever we are giving a query parameter, it has a key pair check-in, and that a value city is equal to this. So for that, we are required to give a key, that what is the like value of the query parameter, what is the key. Okay. In URI parameter, if you observe, there was no like something like that, a key we have to give. We just have to define the resource under it. So we will just give a key, which is in our case a destination, that we will do it on basis of the destination. So we'll go to the next, and then enum will give you the, how you say that, lookup kind of values, whatever you provide here. Okay. So we have three locations. I'll just give SFO, LAX, and one more was, so this, if you see, I haven't given a space after this dash, so that's why it is showing an error. So this spaces and indentation and small and capital is important here. LAX and CFE. So what I have defined till now is I have defined a flight resource, and whenever I'm doing a get, it will ask a query parameter, and the query parameter is destination, which has this values. So now the question comes that, is it like mandatory to give this query parameter when we are doing a call or not? Okay. So we will come to this documentation and see again what has changed in this console. So in flights get method, we'll go to the get method and we will just observe. So it is just showing us that destination is a new query parameter and it's a string, it accepts a string and it is required. Okay. So without this, if you send any input, it will fail. Okay. It is not failing here because it's giving the default values, but when we call it from Postman or anywhere else, it will fail because it is a required value. Okay. So I'll show you how it is. So see, it is coming as query parameters and the values are here, SFO, LX, and CFE. You cannot send it without these values. So this hinders our purpose, right? We wanted to do that it should be giving all the flights, and it should give me an opportunity to filter on destination. But by default, it is not giving that opportunity, right? So for that, we have to just make it false. Required is equal to put destination. If you go here, then there will be an option called false. Required.
I think you have to give after the destination, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm just doing it behind. That is the problem with this. So when we do destination, then we have all the parameters, that what is the maximum length, minimum length, and everything. So we'll just give required, and required is false. So now without this, also we can do it. So now string destination is not coming as required. And if you try it, it is coming blank. It is giving all the things that you want, all the flights or just SFOLX and CFE. Okay. And also if you do a try now, it will not give you any response. Why? Because you haven't defined anything. We have just defined the input part of it right till now. That how our input will go.
Okay.
Right. So next step is to define the response. Okay, so we will just come back to this indentation. I think this, we can come to the query parameters line, or we can here also anything.
We have a responses.
Yeah, so we have this responses, and after this we can give like 200. Why it is not coming? It should come right directly here. Yeah, so I just went back a step and then I saw. So it should automatically give. If it's not giving, there is something wrong with your indentation. So if you see, I was doing a response here. I was just getting the response, and then after that response, I'm not getting any suggestions, right? So that's why I went back here, and then after this, I will be getting a response. So these are all
the response is for the query parameter.
Not the query parameter. Query parameter part is done. Get part is done. Response is for the get part. Here, whatever we are getting, right?
Oh, okay.
Why we will do a get like a response for the query parameter? This is an input value which user will provide, right? You are doing a get and you are providing the SFA value. Then you will get the response from the website. So right now we are getting a empty array, empty basis response. So we are trying to build a response, whatever we want to get it from the website. Okay.
So if I have multiple parameters, like right now we have only destination, right? So we can define any number of parameters.
Yes, definitely. You can add more parameters here.
For all of them, there will be a single response because parameters like,
correct.
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So responses can be different. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not that like only one response you have. Responses, if you do go to a website, there can be multiple response for a single. Suppose there is an error in the website, it will give you a 500 response, it will give you a 400 response, 200 response. So different responses are there. So in a like production ready code, we define all the responses which are default. Okay, so we are not doing it here. We will just give the happy scenario response, which is a 200. But if you go to any project, they will define the 400 response, 401 response, 500 response. So these things will
basically, be defined. Exception handling kind of
exception handling, right? That's yeah. So response 200. So this is what will come here. I have defined 200. So 200 will be visible. Next is to define the body. This is time. So the website is giving how much time it is taking to return. But we have to define this part. This part comes under body. So what will be the response of my body?
Oh.
Okay. So when we give a body, it will immediately ask what kind of body you want, what type of body you want. So there are different type of body: application, JSON, XML, and many things you can do it. But we are going to do it for application JSON. So this is a popular response, which many like all the sites, many RAMLs will be using 90%. You will be doing with JSON only. Only in the legacy systems you will be like encountering XML values. So we have completed this application JSON. Then now we need to add our application response. Like when we are sending a getting flight detail, we have to get all the flight details, right? So how we gonna do it? So to do this, first we need to define a data type. Like if our responses are getting sent to us, what is the data type of this response? So we can define like universal data type here, and just I'm doing it here because we can use it in for different purpose. So it's not data type, it's called types in RAML. You can define directly types and write it, and I will just name it as American flight data type. So this is my American flight. I'm just defining a data type, right? If you are having any other doubt or anything, you can ask me. Okay, why I'm doing this.
Yeah,
So
basically you are defining the response payload.
yes,
right?
I'm defining the
So
response payload.
on which, what are all the variables you are going to pass it back to the caller as a
Yes,
response?
yes. So
For example, you have
mm,
flight name,
mhm.
date, and price, right? Those are all
Yes,
three
correct.
individual values, data values. So you are combining all those three into single data type. It's
Yes,
like a record variable kind of thing, array,
correct, correct.
right? Would say it's
Right.
array of variable. Okay.
Right. So that, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So for our American flight, like normally you will be define the type here or in a different file you'll define, or you can get it from the exchange. So that is what I'm going to do. I will get this type, which is already defined from the exchange. So we have an exchange dependency button. This will come into handy in many situations. Many things we will get from exchange in all the projects. Like even now, if I build a new API spec, only few lines of resources and few responses I will have to write. Most of the things I will just get it from Exchange. The responses, like as you said, is an error handling kind of thing, exception handling. So I'll get that responses and just paste it out. So I'm doing the same thing. I'll just click on Exchange dependency, and we have fragments. I'll just click it here, and I will give. It is already defined here. So this is how it will be in all the projects. So American
So
flight.
these were all built
Mhm.
by MuleSoft itself, or whatever we publish that will also be coming.
Yeah, everything will be coming here. See, there's an option, any organization. You can choose the organization from where you want to get. So it is MuleSoft, or this is training environment which I have built. So this will be your organization name here. So normally we get the specifications from our organizations only, okay, which is already there. So it's again, I told you now that C4E team is there. The whole purpose of MuleSoft is to reuse the things which are already there. So obviously, if you have built a new project and make my trip project, so they would have defined this example and data type already, and we are
Oh,
just doing a new addition to that. So that is how this comes. It will help you in just reusing it.
okay. We don't have to redevelop the whole thing.
Correct, correct. That was the first slide. If you remember that, if one developer has developed few things and he leaves, then the next developer will come and he has to start from the scratch. He'll do in his own way. So that is what MuleSoft is trying to avoid. Okay.
Okay, okay.
So we will select these two. One is the example and one is the data type. I'll show you all these things. You can choose the version here. You can see the created by and organization, everything here. Okay. So I'll add these two dependencies. It will take a few seconds and it will get added to my project.
It's
So
like basically like a library.
library, yes. So now you can see it is added. So this was a dependency. As you can see, there are two added, American flight example and American flight data type. This is Exchange, and I will come back to files. This is my local files, which I'm keeping for this project. So if you see American Flights API to RAML, this is my root file. This is pointing here, the root file. Okay. But right now I have added two exchange dependencies. So this will reside under the exchange modules. Under the exchange modules, there will be a alphanumeric thing. And under that, we have two data type and flight examples. So again, I'll open this data type. Again, there will be a version and there will be a RAML file again, because these all things are defined into the RAML. So we will have a RAML file. Now we will check what exactly it is inside the data type RAML. So this is the data type. RAML1 data type. This is the heading if you want to define a data type. The type is object, like it's an array object. And then we have the properties. What are the keys here? ID, we have integer, code, price, departure date is a string, origin is a string, destination is a string, empty seats, all those things are there. And one interesting thing, if you note that after ID or after any thing, we don't have a required column, right? And if you see in plain type, where plain and type is object, this is another nested object inside the properties. We have false, required is false. So what does this mean? You will be able to understand this thing in this console. So ID is integer. Okay, code is string, which is required. Price is required. Everything you see here is required. But when we go to this plain, the another object inside it, it will have plain type, which is required, and integration, it is required, because these two types, total seats, and the other is what it is, total seats and plain type. Yeah, type. These two things are required, but this whole plain object is a optional one. It's false. So without this also you can just pass your variables. If you give it true here, then it will be also a mandatory type. Okay. So this is one thing which is like an interesting thing to note.
So here you specify the type as object where you mention all the properties, and then plain, that is also kind of a nested object.
Yes, yes.
That is of type object.
Yeah. And under that we have two values. The properties under this is to define the interior, we just do a properties and then we will tell what is inside the data type. One is type and the other is total seats.
But we don't specify them on the previous one, right?
In you
Like
want me
we
to say
have,
this one?
no, from the
Main file.
Yeah, the main file. Can you open the data type, the exchange data type?
Yeah.
So here you have ID integer. Those are all individual variables, input parameter kind of thing, right?
Yes.
And what is that plain? Is it a nested object name or?
It's a nested object name. I'll show you an example how it looks. So this is a data type, okay? And when you come to, I imported two dependencies. One was the data type and other was the example. So example of this data type I have also imported here. So we'll just look to that one and then you will be able to understand what exactly it is saying. So ID is equal to 1, code, price, departure date, origin, destinations, empty seats, and plain is another object inside this field and it has type and Boeing, these two. So this is an like a not mandatory object. It's just an there, like some people want
Here
to do.
type means, is it a variable name, right? It is not
Yes, it's a
object type or
variable
anything.
name.
Okay, that
No, no,
is
no,
where
no,
I
no.
got
Oh, yeah,
confused.
it's a little confusing because of the type, but it's just asking the plain type. What is the plain type? It's Boeing, Airbus, or what plain type? Okay. So why we are doing this is if you do this part again in this main RAML file, it will become a long and huge, not readable, right? If you put again that in the response section, if you put American flight and you define the data type, it will not be readable. Now it's very readable and anyone can able to understand that what flight is doing. So that is the whole purpose, to make our code readable and reusable. Okay, so we can
So on the
directly
top, you simply mention type secret American
American
flight,
flight.
which is
Yes.
actually referring the exchange data
So
type,
it is not
American
referring
flight.
anything right now. Like
Oh, okay,
we
okay.
haven't, we have just provided that this is a type in our thing,
Got
but we have to make it point to that place.
Okay, so
So
you are kind of instantiating that
with that,
exchange data type
mhm,
with this.
right, right. So now we have just given the American flight. This is my data type name, and now I will point it to the place where I want. So I'll tell you how we are pointing it. Okay. So the word not include. Okay. This is the typical keyword, and this is how you point this data type to our training American. So when you come to American fly data type, there will be three dots. Just copy the path. This is one of the way I'm showing. Okay, and go here, give a space and paste. So now what will happen when you come to types, it will go to American flight and it will just refer the data type from here, right?
Okay.
So if you see the address, it's exchange modules. Then there's an alphanumeric keyword which we downloaded, and then type American flight data type 1.01, and then the RAML. So
Suppose in future, if someone changes the
data type.
directory path, yeah,
Mhm,
not data type, or yeah, that is also possible.
mhm.
Or they can move this exchange file to some other location, right? Within,
Mhm.
suppose right now it is having some alphanumeric code.
Yeah.
Suppose if they are moving that into some other folder kind of thing. So we still have to come here and then change it, right?
Yeah. So if you're referring to moving it, so what you're referring to, like it is moved inside our files or in the exchange portal, you're saying?
In the exchange portal.
So if it is moved in Exchange portal, yes, we definitely have to. Uh, but what I'm thinking is, if it is in our files module, right, it will not affect because we are storing it in locally. But yeah, behind the scenes, it is actually referring to the Exchange module. So what I'm thinking is it will not affect because we have already downloaded the Exchange modules here. So I got a question here, like if someone you were thinking that there is a new data type or something is involved and we need to add it in the data type, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
someone does that in the original where it is residing actually in the
Hmm.
fragment, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, we have to re-download it. If you want to refer to the latest one, so we have to re-download it, the latest dependency. So this is one of the tasks which happens in MuleSoft older APIs, that they will come with a new security patch, and then we have to go back to all the APIs and just import the latest spec and refer to the latest spec, point to the latest spec. So yeah,
Okay, okay.
it's a good question. So now we have defined our type. Now we will go to defining actually where we were that we have to define the body, like what is the data type. So as we go to application JSON, it will give you the examples, body, and everything here. Okay. But what we need to define right now, we have to define the display name example. What we have to define the type, that what is the body type it will refer to. So we'll just give type. And as you see, already American flight is coming because it knows that we have defined a type called American flight.
Okay, okay.
So we will just add American flight. Now, if we just give the American flight, it will think that only one object we have to send. Okay. But in our case, we need an array of objects. Okay. So that is why we are just giving a square brackets. So this will give an array of objects. Like we need to get all the flight details, right? Not only one. So that is why we're placing an array objects here. So this is done. Now, if you come back
But
and
we don't have to specify individual variable, right? Because in the American flight type, we have flight code, everything is.
everything, that's what we are referring here, right? We are just referring to that, referring to
Oh,
this one, that our data type, which will return, it will come in this format. Just imagine that if we write the type again, we define here, then it will be a big piece of code. That is why we are referring to our American flight. This
But
is clear, right?
where,
Or like any difficulties
yeah,
in this?
I'm clear, but I'm thinking where we are assigning the values for those uh, individual variables.
Okay, you
Inside.
are interested in seeing that where the values are getting assigned, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So till now, if you see in our response, till now what we have built only the response code and the body. We have just defined the body. Next step is to give the response, exact response. So that's when the example comes into picture. Okay, we will give the example that this is a type and the examples will be something like this. I'll show you. So this is an output, right? We will be providing to the user. So you can write any name here, but for the sake of simplicity, I'll just give an keyword called output. Okay. So now I'm showing till now, if you see flights get, and if you do a get now, I think it will give an error because we haven't given the example. Let's see. So it will give an error because we haven't provided the example yet. If I remove this, let's see what it's giving. So now it is proper, right? Again, till now
Yeah.
we are getting the blank response, but we want a flight response, all the examples. So as it is not able to connect to real-time data of American flight, so that is why we will mock and give example data here, because we need to show it to our our business that this is how it is returning. So that is why we will give examples. Type examples and output. Now, like type, like the way you added the American flight type, we have this example also, right? American flight example. I'll show you that example one. So this is the example that first there is one flight ID1 and this is the values of it. Then there is a flight ID2. This is the values of it. I think this is what you were asking at that time, right? That where
Yeah.
it will
Yeah.
get the values from. So we will just, what we'll do is we'll copy the path, come back to RAML. And again, the way we import is space, include, and then paste. So this is one of the way, as I showed, that you just copy the path and do it. The other way is, it's not like recommended way to do, but yeah, you can do include. Then you get this exchange modules, right? It is in
Okay.
under the exchange module. So go to exchange modules. Then again, this is referring to this ID, go to this. Sometimes you don't find it. That's why we use this kind. So again, the training American flight examples.
Okay.
Then again, it's 1.01. So I'll go
It
here
allows you to go
and example.raml.
stage by stage.
This
Okay.
is done. Okay. So now our input input to flights and the response we have defined the way we want. Okay. So one part of flights get method is completed. Now we will go to the documentation again and check what has changed. So again, we will do, we are not giving any query parameters here. We will just, we will see what, and also you will be able to, without sending a response, you will be able to see the things which you have defined. So it is saying that this is enum values and the output will look like this, right? This is what we defined output. So that is why it is coming output. Body application JSON 200, this will be the value. If you define one more response, which is 201 here, here if you come and define one more response 201, so that output will also come here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now we will do a try it. So again, destination as we have required false, so it's not asking. Send. So see, previously what you used to see only 200 okay, but now we are able to see 200 okay and array of flights.
This is actually coming from that example file,
Example,
right?
right. ID1 and ID2. correct? So whenever now, if you see from a business point of view, what will they do is they will just go to the console, or we will provide this in their URL, and they will just hit it and check that what response they are getting. So that
Okay.
is the best way if you see from a business point of view, right? That even before implementing the code, they are able to see the output, what they will be getting. So this is the best case possible for anyone, even the coder or the development team or the QA team. So we are completed with one of the resources, and under that we have completed the get method. Now we have to do it for which method? Let's see. Get is completed. Now we will do the same thing for this one, our ID method get. Okay, so what difference here we will see? If you see that this is get method is sending two responses, right? ID1 and ID2. Okay, before that, I will show you one more thing. I'll remove this required false. I'll just give required true. Okay, and then I will come back to the flights get method, and I'll do a try. And now if you see, I am getting the SFO, LX and CFA, right? So if I'm just providing the SFO, what do you think it will return? Like, will it return the SFO or will it return all the values? This is a question.
It will not return anything.
Right. That's what that we haven't
Because that
implemented.
needs to be defined under the ID URI parameter, right?
Correct. Not under the ID, like that is a different use case. This is for the destination. We are not providing the ID in this use case. We are just providing the flight ID, which is this ID1 and ID2.
Yeah.
This is a destination one. We are filtering on based of destination.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So we need to define for destination also.
No. So that's what I'm saying, that we don't have anything in our design spec, okay, that we can implement here. This will come into picture only when we are doing a proper implementation. Okay. So there are few things which is loosely coupled, like if it's like simple things like that, that destination will come. So we are not defining it. We will do at the implementation stage. It doesn't have that capability, but we can do it. We can again define a response for SFO and LAX and CFE. Again, define that if SFO is the value, what it will go. We can do it, but right now we are not doing it here because it's not that important to define it here. So it depends totally on the.
So if we have to do that based on the destination SFO in order to send a response back, so what we need to do, we have to define one more data type, right? Not data type, one more the response.
Yeah, we have to just define the response, that if the response is SFO, what will be the like what will be the response if the input is SFO, and then we can just use this output example, and we can just delete the values which are not of SFO here. Okay, so you have SFO and ORD. We will delete this one, and we will keep only SFO in that example. Okay. So we're not implementing it, we're just designing it. That's what I wanted to share with you. So now we will come to this ID method. Like here we want the ID, like based on the ID one, we want to get the values. Okay. So we will go to get, and then we will again come to the responses. Then again, it is a ID get method. So it will be 200 response. Then the body will come. Then again, body will be application JSON. After that, we have what kind of body it is. So we will have the type. Type is American flight. And if you remember in the American flight type, in the above get example, I used a brackets, but here I will not use because ID will return only single flight, right? It will not return all the flights. That is why I'm just leaving it with a normal object. Now we will go to examples. We will use And in examples, we can just give another output. Just type is American flight. Output. Again, output I'm giving. And in this case, what I want to give is only a single flight should be there, right? So I don't have a single flight example right now. Okay, I have only these two flights. So if I provide this one, it will not be right response, right? People will say that I'm asking for a single flight, but it is giving two flights. So for that purpose, and to show you one other way to import your files into this project is the other way I'll show you. So if you see files here, just plus, and you'll see new file, new folder. So what we'll do is we
Or you
will
just have to create a new example
correct,
file,
correct,
remove all other, and then refer it here.
correct. That's correct. So new folder, and we will just give an examples. Create it. Under this, we will add one more file. So this will ask that what kind of example folder you want. So it's RAML 1.2 specification, and then we will just give the name as American flight ID. Create. Okay. So we already have, I think we have an example or something here. Let me just check. Or we can import also for this one. I'm not sure we can do that. Suppose this only. So I'll just include this example. So this is giving some error. American flights ID RAML. So it's not referring to that. That's why I'm thinking that we can't use this example. I think we have already one. Let me check that one first. Give me 2 minutes. For this one, I believe we have to add a example from the example folder, I think. Let me just check that. We will not use this one. That's
Can we not copy the file from the other one?
yeah, we can
Remove.
copy. I was trying to do that, but I think it has some error. I think we already have a file for this. That's what I'm thinking. We'll just import or something. We can import here because this is all defined. The whole process is defined by MuleSoft Training, right? So if you want to get the continuity of it, because we are trying to build up American Flights API project. So that's why I'm not giving my kind of example. I'm just following what they have used. Okay. So what they have used is they have used a file here, and this file is inside this American Flights example RAML. This one we'll see that what exactly the same thing, but I'll show you this just a second. So if you see, it's the same thing, right? Whatever we saw in our example.
Yeah.
but just that it will be easier for us to go with the complete module. I don't want to miss the whole module, that's why, but it's the same thing. Okay, so we can import this again if you have, suppose the users, the business have given you us an example that this is how it should be used. So we can import that files also right here. So this is one of the purpose. That's why MuleSoft wants us to use it as a import folder kind of thing. So we'll just change it again. Should include. So now it's working fine. We got this. Now we will check we'll try to get our resource. So in get resource, we'll go and try it. So it's asking a value, we'll just give one value 10 and then send. So now you can see that only one is getting back in response. So this is the difference between the ID resource and the flights resource. Okay. So these two are complete.